Good afternoon and welcome to Virtual Engineering Week's Smart Manufacturing, Robotics, and AI track, sponsored by Stock Drive Products Sterling Instrument. In this track, we'll hear from groundbreaking experts and engineers on the smart factory and data, as well as how to survive cultural distraction from disruptive technology. We thank our speakers and Stock Drive Products Sterling Instrument for making this track possible.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining our session today. The Smart Factory. You have all of the data, what to do with it. I'm John Danise. I'm the Industry Director for Life Sciences at Birlasoft, and I'm joined by my colleague Adavit Waghmare, who leads our digital transformation practice here at Birlasoft. Birlasoft is a global mid-sized information technology services and solution provider. I lead strategy for our largest industry vertical, which is life sciences, so pharmaceutical and medical device companies. We deliver expertise across a broad range of services from top-tier ERP, product lifecycle, master data management, and CRM solutions to development of innovative digital transformation programs involving advanced technologies like AI, machine learning, big data analytics, and other novel cognitive technologies to total IT outsourcing, including a full range of validation and testing services. Our life sciences clients are mid-sized up to the largest companies in the medical device and pharmaceutical industry segments. Unfortunately, no discussion these days would be complete without a reference to how the COVID pandemic is affecting virtually all aspects of life and business. I want to take an opportunity first to thank all of the first responders who have been risking their health to help those suffering, and everyone else who's been doing their part to do what they can to err on the side of safety by wearing masks and social distancing for the common good over these long months of disruption. Obviously, the broader global economy will continue to feel the effects of the pandemic for quite some time. But when you look at the economy from an industry perspective, it becomes quite obvious that the effects are not uniform, as this chart from a recent webinar from the analyst firm ISG1 shows. Those industries whose occupants have been left fighting for survival are in the lower left, quadrant 1. The unfortunate occupants there include obvious victims in the travel and airline industries. On the other end of the spectrum of misery are those industries residing in the upper right quadrant who may see selective or widespread opportunities if they have the foresight to seize those opportunities. And this is where medical device and pharmaceutical companies find themselves, for the most part anyway. Yes, there were near-term downturns in elective procedures and non-critical care, but overall, companies in this segment are getting on with strategic business adaptations. And you see that digitizing manufacturing is identified as critical when your employees are scattered remotely and need to access the information that's critical to run the business. And also manufacturing flexibility has become a priority. I think this also ties in with future-proofing the business as we're seeing industry invest in modernizing systems, automating business processes, and in data and analytics in a big way, all to ensure IT systems and business processes are hyper-resilient to future disruptions by upgrading, replatforming, consolidating, and automating where appropriate. And overall, companies are taking this time to modernize business applications in general, largely to enable the harvesting of insights from the vast amounts of data that are being collected these days. You say you want a revolution and you want it now. You're in luck because we're in the midst of an industrial revolution right now, specifically the fourth industrial revolution, and manufacturing 4.0 and the connected plant concepts are part of it, enabled by connected, pervasive, cyber physical systems. And the COVID pandemic has only accelerated industry's investments in their digital transformation. As Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, put it in their earnings call back in April, we've seen 2 years worth of digital transformation in 2 months. We've seen this too. Much of the investment is going on in the life sciences industries as they look to ramp up production of various medical equipment, including PPE, hospital beds, and ventilators, while simultaneously trying to be more flexible to be able to manufacture anywhere, should another weather disaster or a pandemic, unfortunately, take some global locations offline. And also, there's a lot of consideration and talk about bringing manufacturing back onshore. These initiatives generally require agility and efficiency improvements that can be enabled by being able to enforce process standardization, monitor equipment and plant performance across global plants remotely. Also being able to maximize process and product quality and leverage predictive plant maintenance capabilities. These are all important for driving efficiency and reducing costs and being able to better serve the customer. You might be surprised at how big this need is to digitally transform manufacturing. A case in point is one of our large device manufacturing customers has 50 plants, actually over 50 plants globally, and less than half run on a modern manufacturing execution system. Many manage their product schedules and execution of their production purely on spreadsheets, or in some cases, even on paper. So there's a paradigm shift that we've been seeing with big data. The volume of manufacturing process data, which is, can be defined as time series data generated by process control systems, laboratory systems, and other plant floor equipment. The stream of that has increased dramatically in our current revolution. We're now dealing with the realm of big data. But without the right governance processes and technology in place, big data is nothing more than spreadsheets of wasted opportunity for improvement. According to a recent study, close to 60% of life sciences companies are still using Excel to aggregate and analyze process data, and 61% of those surveyed said that they have data still on paper. Wow. So there's massive opportunity for improvement here. Big data offers a new style of data analytics, which is different from traditional business intelligence. And with the right analytics tools, its potential to deliver game-changing, highly valuable cognitive insights is massive. And the scope of the insights is wide and deep. Traditional BI projects require the business users to know what kinds of questions they want to ask beforehand. The questions they wanted to ask drove the data model of the data warehouse that the analytics came out of and how that data was stored. The data model also drove what data was collected and by what mechanism. Creating this enterprise data model could be a lengthy process, in many cases resulted in a system that was slow to adapt to changes within the business, changes to the questions that we wanted to ask of that data and the insights that we need to get out of that data as our business realities change. But now with big data, data analysis is happening from the bottom up. Organizations are collecting as much data as they can without knowing beforehand exactly what questions they're going to ask of it. And this means that it's no longer practical to transform every piece of data into the standard data model of the corporate data warehouse. Instead, data is stored in the form in which it was originally captured and only given an appropriate structure by the analysis process or technology that's using it. And this is much more of a flexible approach that enables more dynamic data analysis and can react much more quickly to the rapid changes within a business. So when looking at the components of manufacturing excellence, we consider three dimensions. How data-driven insights can be used to create better products, how it can be used to optimize production processes, and how it can be used to improve the health and performance of core plant equipment. So looking at product first, in the quality assurance and control area, companies can use data-driven insights to better understand how input and in-process parameters, such as machine settings, operator training levels and their certifications, raw material and in-process quality readings will affect product quality outcomes. But in the highly regulated medical device and other life sciences industries, regulatory compliance has perpetually been viewed as a leading impediment to change. Recently, analyst firm Exendia presented their findings about industry's view of regulators in this light to FDA, specifically that 85% of industry respondents to their survey said that the primary role of the quality organization was to ensure compliance. FDA responded that industry was too focused on checking the boxes of compliance and creating paperwork and making auditors happy, rather than focusing on the real objective, which is product quality. And compliance doesn't necessarily equal quality. A fully compliant manufacturer can be putting out a poor quality product. And one that's not fully compliant might be putting out a consistently high quality product. So regulators are now working to be a positive disruptor, taking a new stance that encourages innovation and new technology adoption, including analytics that help close the loop from product development through tech transfer, commercialization, and post-market safety surveillance. And this can be seen in several new guidance documents, which include concepts about moving away from traditional onerous validation processes toward the concept of computer system assurance, which takes a risk-based approach towards product quality and encourages critical thinking supported by data-based, real data-based insights. So looking at the process, one challenge that you may find surprising is that just locating movable equipment and ensuring it's ready for the next production run is a challenge. A startling statistic is that more than 70% of respondents from a recent study aren't fully aware of when their equipment is due for maintenance, upgrade, or replacement, thereby taking it out of availability for production. We did work with a large life sciences company to put sensors on all of their movable production equipment and tie the location data within the plant to an IoT platform to help them track the location and status of the equipment. Manufacturing systems now have the seamless access to that information so that it can be systemically and proactively ensured that all equipment is in the right position as well as has the right status, being cleaned, sterilized, not in use or out of service, to serve its intended purpose for scheduled production runs. And having this process data enabled and data controlled and off the spreadsheet and paper has driven improvements in process repeatability, which has reduced nonconformances and reduced production delays by almost 10%. According to Aberdeen Research, 82% of companies have experienced unplanned downtime over the past 3 years. And that unplanned downtime can cost a company as much as $260,000 an hour. Unplanned downtime results in lost productivity, increased cost to repair and expedite production, delayed order completion, and loss of customer trust. Enter digital twins. They've been around as a concept for almost 20 years, but the technology has really taken off more recently as big data analytics technology like AI and machine learning and IoT have really come to the mainstream. But what are digital twins? They can be understood as virtual models of an actual product or service, facilitating or piece of equipment, facilitating the convergence of the physical and digital worlds. And we're seeing digital twin technology embedded in smart medical devices, but also in the plant equipment used to make those devices. When setting up a new facility or making physical changes to an existing plant, factory planners need to design, model, and test factory layouts before going into production. But that may not always be that simple. There could be hundreds of scenarios to consider and combinations of plant equipment and where they're set up to consider. And too many unpredictable factors come into play for us to process manually. But by creating a 3D digital twin of the factory, planners can assess and measure the impact of various assembly line designs and equipment layouts and come up with the most optimal factory plan. The digital twin's not just a 3D rendering of the physical space and equipment, but is tightly integrated with the equipment designs, providing the ability to track and manage usage and critical performance data that can be analyzed to predict failures and avoid downtime and the cost associated with it and customer experience impacts associated with it before it occurs. So I'm going to hand it off to Adavit now to go through a little more real world examples of what we've done in this space with advanced technologies to help companies digitally transform their business processes in manufacturing.
Hey, John, thank you very much. And thanks for that very insightful view. I think to get started, it's very important to have a clear understanding of what are your objectives. Okay. Now, on this particular slide, you'll see there are a few key performance indicators that we have identified. Every organization will have very, very different objectives. We have worked with some med device customers who said that for them, overall equipment efficiency is more critical. There have been a few customers for whom equipment uptime is more critical. We do have a few customers for whom shop floor productivity is very, very critical. So depending upon what the objectives are, we need to start channelizing the data that we have collected, putting it to the right use, getting the right level of insights, and helping, get the level of efficiencies and productivities that you are really targeting. That's the real core objective. Now, what's really fueled advancement in this particular area is what you see on this particular triangle on the left-hand side. The cost of sensors have started going down. So you have sensors at a very, very manageable cost that you can put in your products and your equipment or even in your operations. Okay, the mechanism to capture this particular data and integrate the information coming from your products or equipment, into your process, I think it's become much more easier. That whole middleware advancement has happened. And that has led to a situation where we can draw a lot of insights from this particular data which we have collected and put it to the right level of use. Here we would like to share with you the digital thread approach, which is also the Birlasoft's 4M methodology. What is digital thread? John did allude to it, that digital thread is really a value of harmonizing the data right across this particular value chain. Now, if you look at a manufacturer, what does the value chain look like? The value chain looks like the 4M, which is modeling a product, manufacturing that particular product, moving that particular product across its life cycle, and then managing that particular product, to make sure that the customer sees value and it performs significantly well. So there are two important elements that you need to take a note of. So the first very, very critical element is to make sure that you are capturing data across all these particular phases. And the second very important thing that you need to take care is to make sure that this particular data is leveraged across that particular life cycle. This is the value of digital thread, and this is what is going to help organizations collaborate much more effectively and create a significant business value for the organization. What this also does is it also helps you to create a lot of these particular initiatives. So let's look at one of those particular initiatives that a customer might have. Let's say there's a customer who's very interested in improving the plant and the equipment efficiencies. If you are able to capture this particular data, you can look at what is my plant efficiency looking like. And we are going to share a few examples with you of how some of our customers have done it. But this will give you a little insight of some of the initiatives that we have seen our customers running in each of these particular areas. Now, let us say that you as a manufacturer have a much larger focus on the manufacturing side or the make side, then you might probably be looking at the initiatives that we have outlined here. It could be industrial IoT and connectivity, it could be the business workflows, or it could be the safety elements that are associated. However, if you have a product where your larger focus is on the supply chain side, then you might be interested in looking at initiatives which are like the connected logistics, or they can be even around telematics, or they can be simply getting an integrated supply chain type of initiative. So all these initiatives are something that span out of your ability to make sure that you have data being captured, data being aggregated, and then insights being run out of this particular data to deliver value across all of these particular initiatives. So what we are going to do now is we are going to walk you through some of the case studies and some of the examples of how customers have leveraged this particular data and what type of value it has delivered to the customer. This is a scenario where there is a manufacturer who has a smart product. So when you say smart product, it really means that the product has an ability to share, its status of how that particular product is performing. Now, there are multiple ways of doing this. The first way is to have an engineering element built into that particular product so that the product has an ability to share, its performance. It can be about consumption. It can be about performance of some of the key elements in that particular product. However, there are a lot of products which probably do not have these capabilities. In that particular situation, what we do is we are able to, create, if you were to call it simply a black box outside that particular product, where we are able to capture this particular data. Now, once you are able to capture this data, let's say that in this particular situation, your objective is that you want to maximize the availability of that particular product, which means that you want to make sure that you are able to look at the condition of that particular product, the performance of that particular product, and if there are any anomalies, you want to detect it, very, very proactively. So the way we go about doing this particular things is to create a situation where you're able to connect that particular product, aggregate that particular data, and create models of looking for anomalies. So what we do when we get started is to look at the potential point of failure. Let us say that if you look at the history of that particular product or that particular asset, and you realize that there are 7 or 8 areas, or there are 7 or 8 components which often fail. Let's say those are the inverters, or it could be the gearboxes, or it could be the motors. One of those particular equipment is really causing that particular equipment to fail. What we do in that particular situation is we start tracking, the areas around those particular elements, and we start collecting the real-time data. As we start creating that particular real-time data, we create this anomaly signature, which is the abnormalities, and we start relating to it to say that if this is the combination that we see, this is a potential sign of of that particular equipment being failing. So the way we drive value out of this particular information is to collect this particular information and do 2 or 3 things. The first thing that we do is to create a dashboard, which you see on the top right-hand side, which gives you a view of how each of these particular products is working on your manufacturing shop floor. Now, there is nothing better for a plant manager but to have this particular dashboard, which gives him a very quick view of how things are working, And you'll see that there are multiple elements across which we can measure the performances, You can put the red, blue, and the green, Where each of these particular indicators indicates the health of that particular product, Orange, for example, probably might indicate that there are some alarms that are coming in. They're not critical enough, but you might want to look at it before they become critical. So there's a very proactive way of dealing with it. That's one way of looking at it. The second way, what we have done is we have created risk models, And the risk models will give you this particular triggers of what is the potential risk of this particular product really failing. So that is the second element. The third element is you might actually automate this particular information and integrate it into a workflow for your operations or your maintenance team to have a look. So take an example that you did find some abnormality and you would like a maintenance individual to look at it. So you actually, integrate the whole ticket management system where, all the information that is captured from that particular product is really fed into, your maintenance management system, and a ticket is generated and you are able to take care of it. The next value that we had created in this particular example was when the technician tries to, address this particular ticket, they are trying to, say, hey, what the fault is, you are trying to give him some information which makes the job of that particular technician much more easier. So what you can really provide to them are really 2 or 3 things. The first thing that you can really provide to them is an asset history, which means that when the technician shows up and starts looking up that particular asset, he has an ability to look at what has been the previous history, what has gone wrong on that particular product. And that's very important use of the data. The second information is you can actually, help him give access to the knowledge base, and given that you are capturing this particular data so that he understands that, hey, this is probably the 2 or 3 areas I might want to look at, and you actually supplement that information by giving him data to, right from how do we open that particular asset or how we take care of that particular asset. Now let's take a look at smart and connected operations. Now, in this particular situation, okay, what you are trying to do is you are trying to make sure that your operations are running very, very effectively. Now, if you see, your operations have multiple tenets that are involved here. You have data coming from your shop floor where your manufacturing is happening. You also have data coming from your ERP systems. You might have data coming from your MES systems. You might have data coming from some of the assets that you have created. Also, you might have data coming from your CRM systems. Now, what we did in this particular example, where the objective of this particular customer was to look at, how am I doing on my operations? The first thing that gets done in this particular example is once you start capturing the data is to create some sort of a data lake where you are able to pull in all this particular information. Once you have a data lake being created, you are able to harness this particular data, create multiple, slices of dashboards, which gives a real-time insight to the plant managers to say, hey, these are the areas which are doing really well. These are the areas which are not doing really well. Okay. It also gives an ability for you to do a trending analysis of how things are working, okay, from an operation standpoint. Now, if you see the operation folks, they are very, very focused on continuous improvement. Okay. They would like to look at a few parameters and they would like to trend it and make improvements, on a periodic basis. Okay, and getting data across all of these particular elements is probably one of the best ways for them to be on top of their operations and help move forward. Okay, the first example really was about if you have the data, how you can make sure that your product is performing really well, okay, and how you are able to, create specific models, okay, where you are able to optimize the performance of the product. This particular example was really about, okay, how do you improve the operations using this particular data? And as I mentioned to you, it was all about not only looking at the trending, but also getting a real-time view and trying to address, situations, or events before they really occur. The third element is going to be about the real-time or the process quality. Now, many of the examples that we speak about, there are situations where you probably, cannot wait for the entire process to get completed. You might want to not only capture data in between the processes, but also to do a quick sampling, okay, of is this particular data in line with my expectation? And this is something which helps you to potentially reduce scrap, reduce the rework. So this is an example of a work that that can get done, which is really implementing your MES or your MOM systems where you capture intermediately the data that's coming in and try to run a sample across it and take some very, very proactive actions. So just to summarize, there are multiple, elements where you can leverage this particular data once you have an ability to capture it, okay? But you always need to start with setting up the objectives, okay, of what you want to do with that particular data. What is the value that, to the business, okay? And once you have those particular objectives set in, okay, you can, go through, some of the examples that we outlined. Either you can improve the product quality, okay, that's number one, or you can improve the overall plant performances, that's the second one, or the third is you can improve their actual processes. okay, which we were trying to outline in these three examples. Thank you very much.